On this episode of Queer Sports, women's leagues have far more openly gay athletes than men's leagues. What's behind the gap? Are pro sports the last closet? We talk with pro wrestler Anthony Bowens, former NFL defensive end R.K. Russell, Olympic rower Kendall Chase, and sports journalist Izzy Gutierrez. Then, the rodeo that's bucking stereotypes in America's heartland, and pro soccer star Collin Martin on life as one of the only out athletes in professional men's sports. Welcome to Queer Sports. I'm Ariel Dumross, and I want to know, why are there so few out male athletes? The percentage of adults who openly identify as queer in the US has doubled over the past decade. Yet across all major men's pro sports leagues this season, there are only 2 openly gay players. Why is America's culture moving faster than most men's sports? Izzy, do you want to take this one?
To me, personally, I think what's missing from the ability to feel comfortable coming out for a gay athlete is history, is something that happened before you. It feels like every time you talk about a gay male athlete wanting to come out, it feels like they're jumping off a cliff. And RK, I'm sure, can speak to this some. We need to know that it's not all on this particular athlete to save the gay culture, to save the LGBTQ community, to save all gay men in sports. There needs to be just more knowledge. It doesn't need to be somebody who is taking all of their identity as an athlete and then just automatically shifting it to who they are as a person, a gay athlete.
What are your thoughts on this?
I mean, it is a very layered topic. I think that there's a lot of pressure on professional athletes just within their sport, just within their city, their community, their team. And I don't think enough focus is also shifted on athletes going into the sport. I believe that there's such a high discrepancy between the out males that we have in society and the out males that we have in sport is because who is gatekeeping sports? Who is cultivating our young athletes? Why are we losing so many LGBTQ plus athletes? So I think we focus on players too because they have the bigger platform, they're the face. But that's a lot to ask of a player to play at the highest level in the world and also, to take on what would become advocacy and activism because that's what happens when you come out.
Obviously we're talking a lot about male athletes here, but Kendall, do you feel that pressure to be an advocate? You're out, you were closeted before,
I think I did kind of take on a role of being I don't want to say the staple gay rower, but once my platforms kind of started getting a lot of exposure, I was like, oh, I have this great opportunity to, be this role model that I necessarily didn't really have when I was growing up. And I had a queer coach and there were a couple people on my team in college who were gay, but all of them were still kind of not really fully comfortable with themselves. So I didn't have that person that I could really look up to for inspiration. And, my platform started getting a lot of exposure and blowing up and people would, high school kids would message me on Instagram and be like, you make me feel so comfortable going into the boathouse. And I'm like, wow, okay, I need to keep building off of this and be that person that, I wish my younger self had to look up to. But yes, my experience has been very different from all of these gentlemen here because as a female athlete, it's kind of like you're queer until proven straight in a way, especially in some sports.
Yeah. It's unfortunate,
like rugby or basketball or softball and whatnot.
Yeah.
So there's not really that pressure.
Anthony, what is it like in wrestling?
So the one word I keep hearing a lot is pressure.
Yeah.
And it's true. That was one of the things outside of a bevy of other things that kind of kept me in the closet was the pressure of knowing that, when I do come out, there's this extra weight on my shoulders to then have to represent an entire community.
Yeah.
To also to be successful, at least in my head, because, a lot of times when male athletes did come out, they either got phased out of the league or they didn't have the same opportunities. So for me, it was, I wanted to be successful in this craft. And there's this extra pressure of now I have to be a successful out LGBTQ performer, which, there wasn't that many examples of successful professional wrestlers until they came out afterwards. So there was a lot of different contributing factors that kept me in the closet.
I just want to do like a thought experiment with you. Hypothetically, you are a wrestler who maybe isn't the best. You come out, what is going to happen to you?
Back when I first started, it was a different culture. I wasn't with All Elite Wrestling. I was an independent wrestler working local shows around the country. Back then, you were kind of safer to be in the closet because there's that hyper-masculine environment like you were just talking about before in pro wrestling, this era of machismo. There is this sense of you have to be tough. And if you were a queer athlete, there's this sense of you're not tough and you have to prove yourself. And in professional wrestling, of course, it's entertainment, but it's a very physical form of entertainment. And if somebody doesn't like you, there might be situations where you may have to actually defend yourself because, we're working with each other, obviously, but again, it's very painful and mistakes happen. People get hurt all the time, but some people, they'll take liberties with you if they don't like you. So in the back of my head, it's, will the fans accept me? Will I have to actually start fighting all these people? Will my coworkers accept me? So there's a multitude of different avenues of fear going on in my head. In today's professional wrestling, it's come a long way, like a long way. I have so much support from my company, from AEW, from my boss, from my coworkers, even the fans too. Like we've seen instances where there are certain independent shows where there might be an out performer in the ring and some idiot yells a homophobic slur, and the fans turn right back around and they police themselves. They got them out of there. They didn't even have to worry about security. So the environment has come a long way. Obviously, there's still work to be done no matter what sport it is, but the environment itself is so much better.
And this is why it's so important, because I was talking about us not having history before, but you are like writing history. Like you are doing this for us, right? People are going to look back and say, oh, okay, if I want to come out, I have you and your experiences to share that I can fall back on.
And you talk about history. I remember Michael Sam getting drafted. And that was the year before I was going into this league, before I got drafted. And at that point, I knew that I was bisexual. And, my best friend knew, but not really no one other than him. And I remember, Michael Sam coming out and being the SEC, like, Defensive Player of the Year and, being just an animal on the field. And then he gets drafted in the 7th round. And then you see, him celebrating and having a kiss with his boyfriend at the time. And just playing every hour on the hour, and everyone had something to say, and it no longer became about his sport or him as an athlete. It became something completely different. And to me, even, it became kind of like, okay, well, let me see what happens. Let me see how this goes.
The test figure.
Yeah, but before I make any decisions on myself, and honestly.
So you were like, this is the blueprint. Let me examine it. Let me kind of study what's going on and see how I feel about coming out.
I mean, at that point, I'd played football, I think, for 10 years of my life, which was the majority of my life. And I wanted to protect that. But I remember just feeling so afraid for him.
I was just about to say, there was an adjustment period when I came out where I think you were talking about it before, where there's almost there's two avenues or two different lives that you're living. One where you're, yourself, and there's the other where you have this wall up and you're, I guess, pretending to fit into society for that normalcy, quote unquote. I met my boyfriend, Michael, in 2016, and I dated him for 6 months secretly. My best friends knew and my family knew. Nobody else. I kept it from wrestling. And I was so tired of living this double life.
It's exhausting.
Very exhausting. And when it got to the point where I did come out, and it was great, there was that sense of relief, but there was also that adjustment period where I was trying to merge those two lives together to become one.
And I would say, even from my own experience of coming out as bisexual in 2019, there's just a lot of education, I think, that happens. Because growing up in sports culture, in male sports anyway, that's kind of the base of your education. What is masculinity? What is it to be a man? What is it to be tough? What is it to be just a human being? What is it to be just a healthy man in any type of relationship, in a relationship with your job, your career, in relationship with your family, in relationship with your partners? And, you come out, and I think a lot of emphasis, a lot of media attention is on coming out because it is also a big triumphant moment where you overcome so much to just be yourself. But we don't talk about what happens after coming out, which for me was just a surge of okay, what do I do with this platform? What is this platform? What is the LGBTQ plus community? How do I fit in it? It's tough, and it takes time. And I think Carl specifically, where he is still trying to keep his career and trying to work on his game and you know, contribute to the team and hopefully win a championship. And hopefully, which I believe he is, doing the education on the back end and figuring out where his voice fits. Not everyone can get in front of a camera and speak.
Yeah.
Not everyone can write a book. Not everyone can do these certain things. So trying to figure out how his voice is best used, how he can get his message across that feels genuine to him and also resonates with the communities that he embodies and that he's a part of, that takes time.
Michael Sam, he skipped a step. He went from, and I'm not saying it's a step like that's a real list, but in terms of people's comfort level, you can come out and then the very next day when you get drafted, kiss your boyfriend on television. That's every single replay is going to be that, and every single person at home, including my father at the time, was going to respond in a way that's just, if they don't like it, they're going to respond just naturally to that.
I think male athletes also need to hear and see and learn about the celebrated stories of the female athletes that have done it.
Yeah.
I don't think there's enough cross there because I'm like, there are leagues, women's professional leagues that are doing it, that are doing it the right way, that are supporting their players, are supporting their athletes. That
The WNBA is a good example of
is
that.
a great example.
Oh, but RK, it's sad how many role models we have in women's sports. They're sitting right there for us, and we don't use them. We don't accept them as our role models, even though they've done what we want to do.
Our society is so stuck like in our misogynistic roots of our history. And like, yes, we are better, and I think we are slowly taking steps in the right direction. But until we have like the greater society truly caring about women in general, not just in an athletic standpoint, like we will not be equal until we get everyone caring.
Yeah. We'll be right back. So here's an interesting stat. The number of openly LGBTQ players on the WNBA's Connecticut Sun team last season alone is higher than the total number of openly LGBTQ players who have come out across the NBA, the NHL, MLB, NFL, and the MLS in the history of those sports. It feels like professional sports organizations could be doing more and playing a bigger role to sort of foster environments that allow players to come out. Izzy, what could be done?
Well, I mean, honestly, it needs to start at the base point of understanding that we're all on the same page on these things, right? Because, I mean, recently, I think it was the Tampa Bay Rays who, during Pride Month, were a handful of players refused to wear the Pride flag on their uniforms, and it just makes you wonder, are we on the same page? Like, I look at Major League Baseball and Billy Beane, who came out while he was playing, or right after he played as a baseball player, and is now involved in their sort of inclusion directive over there. And even with somebody like that powerful, I consider him a powerful name, a figure in LGBTQ sports history, you still have situations like the Rays. They have people coming to their locker rooms and talking to them about these situations, and it feels like maybe a lot of these players are just tuning them out or just saying, hey, I disagree. I'm not going to deal with that at the moment. I'm going to play my sport. And so I think that's the first thing that you have to do. And then secondarily, it needs to be more than just these cursory events. Like, I feel great when I walk into a Pride night. Like, it feels amazing to have like all the support. Like, I probably would have, seen one of those when I was 10 years old. Who knows? I probably would have come out, as a teenager, as a 20-year-old. But once that night's over, you're not changing anybody's minds. You're not, doing the work after that.
When you were in the NFL, was there anything, like, did you have gay players come and talk to you guys?
That wasn't my experience. I didn't have that. There's also was no outreach to LGBTQ plus nonprofits or organizations. There was no education. There was no verbiage on what to say, what not to say. I think the NFL I want to applaud them where there is progression. I think, in Pride Month on National Coming Out Day, I think they have made great strides. I think even in supporting Carl and his coming out is a positive trend for the NFL. But are they doing enough? No. Is any male league doing enough? No. And where does that start? I think it starts with really where your power lies, which for the NFL in such a large organization, not only is financial in backing the Trevor Project as they have recently, but is also in their platform, in their marketing, in their communication. But I want to see more outreach. I want to see more engagement with the LGBTQ plus community, bringing that fan base in and also cultivating hopefully a new fan base, because a lot of LGBTQ plus people don't feel welcomed, specifically in football.
You can you can decide to educate as much as you want. It's not on these leagues to teach the history of what it is to be gay, but you can if you want to. You know, you can educate these players and say, look, you might not have been taught this in college, you might not have been taught this in training, but this is a quick history of, you know, LGBTQ, and this is what they've been through, and this is, you know, where we are now. Okay? So you're more educated. We don't want to, I think we assumed too much. Like, I remember growing up thinking, okay, it's getting more acceptable to be gay. Eventually, maybe I will, you know, be comfortable enough to come out.
Right.
And then it just felt like the conversations happened way too fast. And it was just like forcing everybody to say, you have to accept, and this is why. And it's just like, well, we haven't really slowly educated everybody this entire process. So you get these athletes
You're not
coming...
welcomed in. You're not, you know, as a person who maybe doesn't fully understand the gay community, has some reticence, maybe, but, you know, harbors some homophobia. You are not taken in and gently brought along.
Correct.
I think a lot of, in my sport, specifically football, there's a lot of fear around saying the wrong thing, around being canceled, around being maybe assigned a tag that you don't feel is representative of who you are. And instead of using fear to kind of whip players into shape of be accepting, empowering them with the tools, the knowledge, the information, the stories to be a true ally.
Kendall, does it matter when straight athletes around you demonstrate allyship? Like, does it make a difference for you?
Absolutely. I mean, like when I was coming out and my family was, you know, I love them to death. It was a difficult time, but it's like, I don't need you to agree with me and like who I am as a person, but I at least bare minimum need some support.
Yeah.
And I want to feel loved. And kind of going back to like what RK was talking about, like, a lot of it stems from just educating people. Not everyone has to agree, but people should feel like they get support. Like we can agree to disagree on so many different topics. Like everyone is entitled to their own opinion, whether or not we agree with each other. We, as humans, like we need to feel supported in order for us to truly excel in life and sports. Like as an athlete and feeling like I am supported as a member of the LGBTQ community, I feel like I can be authentically myself and not hiding when I go into the locker room or I'm just like hanging out with my teammates outside of practice.
Totally agree, because you don't want to feel like you're alone. I tell a story all the time where I pulled my car into my driveway in the garage, and I just sat there and I cried for at least 30 minutes, just trying to get it all out of me because I didn't feel like I could talk to anybody until I told my best friends. They were the group of people that helped me accept me and let me be authentic all the time. And then when I filled my my parents in, also super supportive. Basically how I came out was my boyfriend, he had always wanted to start a YouTube channel, and he was like, hey, let's make like a cute little YouTube video. And I thought, know what? You have like 2 subscribers. Let's just make the video. I made the video. I'm thinking nobody was gonna see it, and I was completely wrong. Some of the other wrestlers saw it a couple months later, and I remember getting the text from my buddy Damien. He was like, hey dude, I saw the video, with a little ... And I pretended that I didn't know what he was talking about. And he goes, you know, you don't have to like pretend anymore. Like we know, we understand, all the wrestlers saw it. We love you, we respect you. We wish you would have said something earlier, which is always the response. It's not that easy, guys.
Right. It's like, that's nice, thank you for
thank you.
that. Next, pro soccer's Collin Martin on the moment his team stood up for him as an openly gay athlete. I'm here with our guest, Collin Martin, a professional soccer player and midfielder for the San Diego Loyal. He came out publicly in 2018, and at that time, he was the only out active player across all of the men's major leagues. I'm talking about the NFL, the NHL, the NBA, the MLB, and the MLS. Collin, thank you so much for joining us. How you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me.
I've read that you wrote in your journal in the 4th grade that you wanted to be a pro soccer player. How did that align with you being gay?
Yeah. So 4th grade, I'd say, was around the time I was probably first having any inkling of an idea that I was gay. But I'd say from the moment that I knew I wanted to be a professional soccer player, there was always a little bit of doubt whether that would be a space for me, whether I would be able to hide this big aspect of my life, but also make my dreams a reality. I think when I became older, it became more of a reality of what parts of myself would I be hiding and what parts of myself would I be able to share with teammates, friends, and family. It was certainly a process getting there.
You did finally come out publicly to everyone in 2018. You finally tell the world. Why did you decide to do that?
I was doing this initiative for Athlete Ally, and basically I was showing up for the gay community and giving my own money and talking about it. And I had my straight teammates that were supporting, and a reporter asked me, why are you doing this? Why is this important to you? Assuming that I was straight. And I lied to her, basically. I didn't get to tell her the full story of why it was so important, not only for me to be showing up, but also my teammates, my straight teammates that seemingly had nothing to gain. They were supporting.
In that moment, you're talking to this reporter and you sort of have an opportunity, right? Like you could have come out right then and there. You could have just told her, well, actually, like, this is why I feel aligned with this cause. But you didn't. What was the thing that was in your mind stopping you from doing that in that particular moment?
I think ultimately with my family and friends, it all felt safe enough. And I think when you open yourself up further in sport, I think I've spoken a little bit, but the fans and that culture was sort of the last area where I was wondering if I would be accepted. Another big thing I realized is that I didn't want to come out after I was done playing. And sort of around that time, I was sort of figuring that out, and I didn't want to have any regrets in that regard.
Because that is a thing that a lot of players do, right? They come out after they retire. Why were you like, I don't want to be one of those guys? Not that there's anything wrong with that, it's a personal decision, but...
Yeah, I didn't know how big of an impact, or I didn't know how big of a deal it was going to be, but deep down, I had an idea, and I felt, that it would be a shame if you waited to help maybe one or two or three people. Little did I know that it probably was going to impact more people and just be, hopefully what I thought would be a watershed moment to then see more people like me out.
You are in many ways sort of this unicorn in men's sports, right? Like there's one other unicorn, it's Carl Nassib, and then there's you. I am wondering though, are you disappointed that there hasn't been a wave of athletes, of male athletes coming out since you've come out?
Disappointed, sure. More so questioning what are we doing as a society where we're not allowing people to feel comfortable to come out. There must be something that's happening at the youth level for queer athletes and gay athletes like myself feeling like those spaces weren't for them. And therefore looking in other areas for that acceptance. And so I think right now, there's a lot of different spaces that are very welcoming to queer people. And you see the visibility, and there's a ton of different professions that maybe you can see yourself going to. And I think sports is still an area where if you're not feeling accepted at all at a younger level, maybe that person's just gonna stop playing.
Pretty famously, there was this one incident during a game where a player on the other team said a gay slur to you. And what ensued is that your team ended up walking off the pitch, basically, right? In protest, forfeiting the game. At the time, it sounded to me like you felt a lot of guilt about that incident. Am I accurate?
It was definitely a living nightmare. Having my sexuality impact the game, that would be just about the worst thing that could possibly happen to me. Because all I ever wanted was just to play, and more so the impact it had on my teammates. It was the last game of the regular season. If we would have won, we had a chance to potentially be in the playoffs. We're our first year club, could have been our first playoff appearance, and we were up 3-1 at half, and it happened right before the halftime. And we were doing incredible to end the season. Just on a personal level, I didn't want the season to end, of course not. So for my teammates to unanimously make the decision to walk off the field, obviously with the leadership of my coach saying the same, he made it very clear he felt like we should not go back on the field. But he opened it up to my teammates in the locker room, and not a single person said that they didn't feel like that was the right decision.
Wow.
I said I would like to go back on the field. And so they said, okay, we'll go back on the field if that player is reprimanded, if the coach takes him out, if the referee gives him a red card, if something is done. We walked back on the field and nothing was done, and so we walked right back off. The positive story of that allyship and that showing up for a brother, a teammate from my team and my club, that was just an incredible moment. And I hope a lot of people around the world saw that.
Have you heard from that player since then? Did you have any conversation with him, the one who said the slur?
Without giving you all the details, it was a very hard moment for him. And I tried to show empathy for him because just as I then received more slurs online, he got a barrage of really hurtful messages. And I think that's just another part of the story today, that when you are, when your story does get propelled around on social media, there's always going to be backlash, whether it's deserved or completely undeserved.
And there was some remorse there.
Yeah, he is a player from Jamaica, and I just wanted him to think about what it's like for maybe a queer person in Jamaica.
Yeah, it's pretty brutal for a queer person in Jamaica.
Yeah, I just wanted him to think about what it would be like for someone in his country that would feel, to hear those words or to feel completely unsafe in certain areas.
Collin, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Really a delight talking to you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Nearly half of LGBTQ youth said that they avoided locker rooms and gym class out of fear. Kendall, what can we do to make these kinds of athletes feel safer?
I mean, I think it kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier. It's like allyship and educating people starting at like a younger age so that they develop this foundation of what it means to be a human being. Whether you're queer or not, like we all are a part of this human element.
Yeah.
And developing that culture and that foundation from an early age will allow, younger individuals to feel more comfortable coming out and feeling like they have a safe space, whether it is like on the field, in the locker room, like they have an environment where they can be themselves and they're supported. So I think everything goes kind of back to education.
Yeah.
And I do think that there needs to be sort of an education in terms of, hey, calming some of those fears. Like, what are you afraid of in the locker room? Oh, well, let's go to situations and let's be a part of situations where you see what it really just feels like to be part of a normal sporting environment, where it isn't intimidating. But making that leap and just sort of putting yourself out there. At some point, the history and the fear and everything that's happened in the past, it's just going to have to be history. And people are just going to have to make that leap and just speak up for themselves. And that's the first place it has to come. You'll have support eventually, but you got to be that person.
Yeah.
It's hard to calm those fears because I distinctly remember, I played college baseball at Seton Hall University. And I actually never said this before, but there's a person on the team that I thought knew that I was questioning my sexuality. Mm-hmm. And it led to the most ridiculous thoughts, to the point where I wouldn't even change in the locker room. I would get changed in the parking lot because I thought that maybe he told everybody, and then they thought that maybe I was like in the locker room looking at them or something. And my coach actually caught me changing in the parking lot and said, "Hey, come back. Like, why aren't you changing in the locker room?" I didn't tell him, but that's kind of where it led to, because your mind starts to wander in all different kinds of places. Like, we're a college team, we all shower together. What if these guys think that I'm looking at them like I'm just here to play baseball?
Yeah.
But your mind just starts going in all
head.
different types of directions. So I think that's where being educated, having resources that you can go to within the program to speak to people to really support you and calm those fears.
I do think that youth do have access to a little, more resources than, maybe I had when I was a kid, right? More communities, right? Like, social media is a really good place where that's happening. TikTok, for example, like, you see a lot of young athletes who are coming out on TikTok who are able to find inclusive communities there. Is that the future for athletes? I mean, you're on TikTok, you have a significant following. Like, is that it?
I mean, I wouldn't say that like TikTok is the future of athletes, but I think social media has allowed us to kind of channel who we are to foster greater development and support amongst like the younger generation, because all these kids, they look up to us.
Yeah.
And in TikTok, there's this huge, I didn't get on TikTok for the gay shit. I was just bored in quarantine. I was like, oh my gosh, there's this whole new gay community on the interwebs. But, it's great for younger kids, whether they're athletes or not, to see athletes and just like people in general being their authentic selves.
right now we're talking about youth, and we have mentioned that like some of them feel comfortable coming out, even football players on social media websites like TikTok. But I just want to be pretty clear about this. While it is getting easier for some athletes to come out, that is not the case for a lot of them, including especially trans athletes, right? Like things are not necessarily getting better for trans athletes right now. And Izzy, I'm just wondering, like, can you sort of give us, in as much as you can, a little bit of the landscape there?
I will say, I mentioned earlier about maybe things moving a little too fast and people having to understand things that maybe was beyond their scope a little too quickly. And I feel like the trans athlete conversation or the transgender conversation is on a lot of people on a mind that's already working through a lot of other things. And it almost feels like it's too much to take in, to take on. And this is why what's happening is just a lack of education again, and just a guttural sort of response of like, that doesn't sound right. And I think, whether you call it the Christian evangelical, the far right, whatever, sort of creating these laws. It started with the bathroom bill in 2018 and it went even further recently, trying to create this idea that it's very simple. Boys play with boys, girls play with girls. These sort of concepts that you can't really argue with, can you? And then just
I can.
No, of course you can. Of course you can. But I'm saying just say 50 years ago, 100 years ago, or people who just believe like the binary system.
Yeah.
And that it's an easy thing to latch onto, and people will just believe without having to think anymore. And
it feels intuitive.
100%. I go to the gym and like in group workouts, and I hear people talking about Leah Thomas, and it drives me insane.
Yes.
Because of the conversations that they're having. Oh, the poor girl who finished second, she worked so hard. As if Leah Thomas didn't work her ass off in sports her entire life, right? But the idea of me turning and facing them and telling them why they're wrong and explaining to them all the things that they're saying, it takes the entire hour, if not more. So it's a lot to have to do to educate people on, and I just don't think enough people are taking the time to do so, and are just having this immediate reaction, and people are just like, hey, what are you gonna do?
I mean, that's definitely an area where we really do have such a long way to go still.
Can I be honest? When I get asked that question, I get nervous. Because I don't know if I'm going to say something wrong because I am not transgender.
Can I be honest?
Right?
When I asked you that question, I got nervous for you.
Yeah. Because one time I was on a podcast and I started saying some stuff, and then at the end of it, I was just like, man, should I have been saying that? Shouldn't you just have somebody else a trans person who could speak for themselves rather than have me say it? And I probably did say a couple things that were wrong.
Okay, I don't think that you did. I also don't speak for all trans people.
Sure.
I also think, how powerful is it? Yes, ideally you want to have more trans voices being able to speak for themselves. Yes, totally agree. And also, how powerful is it for you, a man of color, to come on this show and talk about this? That's huge.
Yeah. The interesting part when it comes to trans athletes in these conversations is that, like you said, when people don't know, they don't say, I don't know.
Right.
They say, that doesn't seem right, or that's wrong, or no, it can't be that way. Just say you don't know. Open up conversation. Be vulnerable in a way of I don't know everything. I don't know how I feel about this topic of trans athletes in sports because I don't have the information. That's, to me, that's
Yes.
more honest. That's where if you need to start there, that's where you should start. Don't start in the negative. But where trans athletics is right now, especially for trans women and not being able to compete, I think we need to get to the decision makers first. I think that's the more immediate thing because laws are being made, policies are being made. The Olympics is deciding
And they're all
on whether
different and none of them actually make sense.
Exactly. As we all know, as athletes, we're all on the clock when it comes to our athletic careers. And there are trans athletes who are on that same clock who don't have the ability to perform because of these people making decisions that know nothing about them.
Yeah. I just want to say thank you for touching on this. I personally think that it is really very powerful to hear specifically a bunch of athletes actually talk on this issue because you don't see that as much, specifically a bunch of cis athletes. That to me is super meaningful. So thank you so much. We'll be right back. When we come back, we're going to the Gay Rodeo, y'all. Welcome back. Founded as a safe haven from homophobia and violence, the International Gay Rodeo Association has been around for more than 40 years. We had the chance to follow two friends as they competed and shared how the rodeo saved their lives. Take a look.
Our dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you so much that you've given us this time to come together to do something that we love, rodeo. We ask for your loving arms to wrap around us, make us feel loved, make us feel welcome, make us feel a part of something, and know that you love us no matter what.
And a 1, and a 2, and a 3, let's rodeo! All right, let's get this show going.
The gay life can be rough. We all know that. And we have to put a shield around us sometimes when you walk down the street. I had to, back in my hometown. And I had to be very cautious who was around me, 24/7. But being around crowds like this, you can be yourself. You can have the freedom that you want.
Outside of gay rodeo, like the regular rodeos, it's a man's sport almost. I know a lot of people on this circuit that actually do compete on straight rodeos, but they go by a different name because they're not out or don't want their jobs to know. Especially back in the day when gay rodeo was first coming out and stuff, you have these gay cowboys that aren't out to the public. But this was their comfort zone. But when they came here, they would change their names, and vice versa. If they would go to straight rodeos to compete, they would change their names as well, just because if something ties in to their name and somebody finds out, they didn't want that backlash.
You know, a lot of trans people won't compete in the rodeos because they're required to go under the gender that they're born as, regardless of what their ID says. Whereas our rodeo circuit is open to everybody and everyone.
All right, here comes Jackie right now. Out and
My name is Anthony Lumpkins Hood, but everyone on the rodeo circuit knows me as Chicken Nugget. We're doing the same events that you find in normal rodeos. We got bull riding, we've got ranch saddle bronc, barrels, flags, and poles. Of course, we have our few that are fun and different. In wild drag, back in the day, the queens that, like what I'm doing, they wore like gowns, like big gowns, and would go out there and do this. It's insane.
Boy, do we have a fashion parade for you out there today. Wild drag race. The drag must mount the animal. No, Jerry, that's not supposed to be topless. Oh, we got one team across. Jerry Hubbard seemed to make it. Dress or no dress?
To me, rodeo is all family. It's a second family, and sometimes for a lot of contestants and members of these organizations, this is their one and only family. When I first came out, I was bullied, beaten, couldn't use the bathrooms at school, and when I did, I had teachers escort me. Walking down the street with my best friend, I got jumped, broken ribs. It was a really, really hard childhood, especially after coming out, and not having full acceptance from my father at the beginning even made it harder.
I mean, I was sad when he came out to us because I thought, oh my God, here's my chance of not having grandkids, and but that was very short-lived. He, however, was the total opposite.
Yeah,
he was the biggest gay basher there was.
Yeah,
and
I was pretty bad. I probably made the biggest transition. I didn't want to be the reason that my kid committed suicide because of something I said, so I didn't want to be that dad.
Yeah, I ended up suffering from bulimia. I suffered from severe depression. I was on the verge of killing myself.
He was very depressed.
He was looking for that something. And then when he got introduced to the rodeo scene, he was a totally different person.
The gay rodeo saved my life, and in the ultimate end, I probably wouldn't have been here today if it wouldn't have been for this big family of mine.
I got married to Miss University in Nebraska. I got divorced, so that's when I told my folks I was gay. It was, I don't know what it was, but it was like 10,000 pounds of weight just floated away. Just floated away. And it was just a whole new world, after hiding it ever since you're 7, 8 years old. Gay rodeo saved my life. tell you the truth. Basically saved my life.
That's why we come to all these, because we are parents to a lot of them, because a lot of them have lost their families.
They're all our kids. It's just the way we look at it. You
Our
gotta.
doors are open. They come to our house at Thanksgiving.
Everybody respects more of each other. You do not find that in straight rodeo. It's cutthroat. This, if somebody needs help, they'll stop and help you.
My name is Malcolm Cook, and I'm competing in goat dressing, just putting panties on goats. It's really fun. I'm handicapped, so I use a walker, a mobility aid to move. Being handicapped, IGRA actually embraces that. They accept you no matter what. They actually did a fundraiser and earned money at the last rodeo for me to get a special walker to use out in the dirt.
Check these two out, you guys. This is Malcolm Cook. One of his dreams was to compete in our rodeo doing goat dressing, and he just did it right there.
It means so much to know that we are welcome to do what we love and not get hated and shunned for it.
We're just a big family now.
My mission in life now is to help as many people as I possibly can, because Gay Rodeo was here for me when I needed something to fall on. This is always going to be a safe haven for anyone and everyone that would like to come.
When you're in high school and you finally find that group of friends that you just click with and they become your best friends for life. This is my high school group. This is where I felt I didn't have to present as not me, and it felt like I had a 1,000-pound weight taken off my chest. I no longer felt like I was carrying the world's worries on my back. Best thing I can think of to describe it is it felt like a bird taking flight for the first time.
Thank you to our panelists for joining me. This has been honestly so fantastic, so great. I'm so happy to have you guys on the show. I have one more super important question before we go. What is your hype song? When you're trying to get ready, what is the song that you go to?
You first.
Okay, there's a lot. Rowers tend to listen to some crazy shit, especially when we're deep in the pain cave on the erg. But one of our favorites is called Born to Rage, USA Edition by Dada Life.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
I have no idea what that is.
No one probably knows, but it's a good pump-up song.
Okay, all right. How about you, RK?
One song. Right now, it's probably Jimmy Cooks by Drake and 21 Savage. Before, it was probably Mad City by Kendrick Lamar. Now, anything Drake, Kendrick, J. Cole, loving. But those are two songs that stand out right now.
All right.
Kendrick or J. Cole?
Why I gotta pick?
Because.
I'm bisexual. I don't gotta pick nothing.
Good point. Take them both. Mine's changed all the time. Currently, man, this is cliche. It's Beyonce, but it's energy. That song, Energy,
Yes.
I love that song. It's short, to the point, get my energy up. There you go.
Okay.
It's hard for me to pinpoint one song, so I guess an easy cop-out would be anything by Coheed and Cambria or Circa Survive. Actually, no, there is one song that I kind of used to inspire. I want to get into an inspirational mood. It's called Rise Today by Alter Bridge. Love the lyrics. It really gets me kind of
Nice.
amped up.
All right. I love it. That's great. We're going to have to create a playlist for the show. Just put all of those on there. I think it'll work. Thank you so much again, and we'll see you next time.